Hello and welcome back to my channel, Wobbly Bookbird. On today's video, I will be talking about Legendary, the second one to the Caraval series written by Stephanie Garber. So, let me know what you think. One thing that really drew me is that the cover is absolutely gorgeous. I love it. It has a lovely spade in the middle that has the colours of red petals, and I think that's really nice. There's also Legendary that's written in a lovely gold font. And yeah, this is the American cover that I have, as it was bought by my boyfriend's family, and I really love it and I really appreciate it. So yeah, I definitely prefer the American versions over the UK ones. I don't know if that's controversial or not, but I don't know, there's just something about them that's just kind of more glamorous. It's just nicer. Anyways, so number one, character development. Now, in this book, the character development I feel was handled actually really well. The main focus of the story is Tella, who is Scarlett's sister, that we briefly met in the first book, but in this one, who she is as a person is really expanded on, and we really get to understand her motives, her dreams, desires, things she doesn't like, things she does like, her strengths, her weaknesses. We get to really see that in this book. So coming from this book as a focus on a character, I think Legendary does it really well in terms of focusing on Tella. As I say, it focuses on her all throughout, her relationships with other people. It's very good at, I think, showing her growing up into the person that she needs to become for the third book. It also, I think, has a massive focus on love in regards to her. There's a lot of romance in this book in comparison to Caraval, and I think it's because Scarlett is a character who does accept love quite willingly, while Tella, on the other hand, unless it's her sister, doesn't really accept other people into their lives. She's very closed off, and it's because, as we find out in this book, her mother abandoned them both. I mean, even worse than that, she also sold her to a temple called the Temple of Stars, which is ran on the focus of, it's a religious temple in the city of, and with a focus of worshipping the fallen star, who is a fate. He's one of the biggest fates. He's the biggest fate of them all, to be honest, but spoilers for the third book, but yeah. As I said, we find out in this book that her mom sold her to a temple as part of a deal exchange, in that the Deck of Destiny, which is the cards that has all of the fates trapped within, is kept safe in this temple, and in exchange her mom was willing to give Tella up to them. And obviously this has a massive compound effect on Tella, because, you know, her mom literally just sold her as if she was worth nothing to her. And we see her struggle with that, and the pain that she feels because of that. Although I will say it's quite interesting, because the pain that she feels from that is not it doesn't influence her to the point of her pushing other people away. If anything, it does the opposite. It actually makes her want to reach out to Dante, who we also find out is legend in this book, but we'll get to that later, which is also quite interesting. And also Jax, who is the Prince of Hearts, who is one of the Fates. So it kind of leads into a love triangle between the three of them. And in terms of how the love triangle is something I will say that I don't normally like love triangles. Like, I normally find they're not handled very well, but in this book I actually didn't mind as such, because Stephanie actually built beautiful chemistry with both Teller and Dante, or Legend, and Teller and Jax. So it's kind of like when you have scenes with Teller and Jax, not as such that you want them to get together, but their chemistry and their very volatile relationship is a very interesting read. Well, in comparison, like, Dante is the one that you want Teller to be with. Maybe the reason that the love triangle somewhat works in this book is because it's not really a love triangle at all. It's sort of written in a way that on the surface looks like a love triangle, but in reality we all know that it's the main relationship is between Donatello and Dante. Now, whether you like that kind of way that love triangles are written is very, I think, subjective on you as a person. Like, there's some people that would really hate the way that that's written because it's not a traditional love triangle, where other people actually wouldn't mind having that bit of hints for the main character to be with other people, but we all know where the real OTP or one true pairing is in this, and that is Dante and Teller. I think the relationship throughout the book is done really beautifully, especially as you see that conflict with Dante as a character of trying to be a better person because of Teller, and she sees it too, and I think it's really sweet because she wants to trust him, but she doesn't want to trust him because she knows that his power, which we find out is linked to the Fates in this book, or more specifically a witch sort of took some of the power from the Fates and gave some of it to Legend. So it kind of makes Teller realise that Dante probably is not the person who'd be willing to sacrifice his power for her. But at the same time, she can't help but hope that he will, and it's quite sweet to read about. Furthermore, like, during the book, we're able to see the true nature of some of these characters, as I said, like Legend, who we know in this book as Dante, but he's actually Legend, and also Jax, who, you know, he appears as the heir, the secret heir to the Empire, but in actual fact he is the Prince of Fates, Prince of Hearts. In actual fact, he is the Prince of Hearts, whose ability is able to basically control the emotions of other people, but he can also, as well, stop people's hearts and effectively kill them, which is, you know, quite interesting as a character to read about. And I also really like the fact that he's written in such a way that while there are sort of that archetype characteristics of him being the villain in the series, he's also not the villain. Like, he may have some of these characteristics, like being untrustworthy, doing dodgy things, being quite cruel at times, but at the same time he is not the villain of the story, and he is just someone who the way Stephanie writes him is just someone who has been alive for a very long time. Because of his powers, he can't feel emotion or has a conscience, and that just leads to him doing really horrible things because of those reasons. Like, if you take the humanity out of someone, what are you left with? And that is Prince of Jacks. He tries, especially because of Donatella, but there's only so much he can understand of why she chooses her actions the way that she does, and why everybody else does as well. He struggles to connect with that empathy that he just doesn't have physically. And I think that was really interesting to read about. That it's not so much as a villain, but just more someone who just doesn't have those things because they're not human. And I think that point sort of gets across quite nicely in this book. In regards to Legend as a contrasting character, who is someone who was human, but who also, because of him having powers of a fate, also means that he doesn't have the ability to love. It's also quite interesting because throughout this book you can really see a glimpse of that human side to him, of like how much he cares, and he can feel like all of emotions except for love. And I think like he was one of my favorite characters in Caraval anyways, because I really loved his character because it was quite interesting. He had an interesting backstory, and while it was kind of, you could tell that he was, the secret of Legend wasn't really kept as much of a secret of who he was, although in Caraval I really was guessing, but by this book it's quite obvious. I think it'd be quite interesting to reread Caraval knowing that he is Legend, and seeing, or at least understanding a lot of his actions in that book much more now. I think that'd be quite interesting to do, and maybe at one point I would like to reread it with just that perspective. And also the side characters like Scarlet and Julian, they were handled pretty well too. I actually preferred Julian over Scarlet and how they were handled more. I think it's because I feel Stephanie didn't really need to have Scarlet being all mysterious and acting kind of dodgy and acting untrustworthy when it just really wasn't needed. But I will say, at the end, everything's okay anyways. We find out she was just writing letters to her actual ex-fiance, not the fake one that was in Caraval. So yeah, I still think the way that the side character were handled was quite well. But Stephanie never really writes her books as the side characters are growing as much as the main focus characters. She puts a lot of her energy in writing to grow the main focal characters, and in this book the main three were Jax, Dante and Teller, and I felt that they were handled really well, and was done really good in which, so I would give the character development a 5 out of 5 because I really loved it. It really kept me hooked because of seeing how much they were growing and seeing what choices they would make. So yeah, 5 out of 5. My second part of my reviews is the world development, and I felt like the world development in Legendary was also really nice. We got to actually visit a new place because the first book takes place on Legend's private island, which is Caraval, and it leads you to where Caraval is set. Well, this book has a focus on Valinda, which is where the main empire is right now. The world is still amazing and it continues to expand in this book, with the reader being able to see more space and experience them in different ways from the first book. And that was really nice. As I said, we got to go to Valinda, which is a whole new place with a lot of new districts, and we got to see more of the world in this series, and I thought that was really good. I do have an issue with the world development in this, in that the fates and how they were handled. Now, separating it from Prince of Jacks, which I've just talked about, which I really did love how that was handled, Stephanie introduces 32 new fates. And I felt like instead of bringing them into the story individually when they're needed, if they were needed in a story, it was sort of a lot of information was thrown at you about all these fates, some of which that we don't even get to meet or see in this book. And I think that was just a bit too much for the reader. Like for me especially, like, because I'm just there like 32 fates, I've got to keep track of 32 fates and what they do and their individual powers. Like, Jesus. Like, it was a bit much. The fact that, yeah, so yeah, that was an issue, especially as I got it right. There was 32 fates in all. There's 16 immortals, which are then split into higher fates and lesser fates, I think. There's 8 places and there's 8 objects. And there's a lot. So you have Jax, of course, the Prince of Hearts. You've got the blank card, which is an object. You got the Maiden of Death, who is an immortal. Undead Queen. You've got Mistress Luck, the Oracle, the Assassin, the Shattered Crown, Unwed Bride, Chaos, Lady Prisoner, Fallen Star, Murder King, Pregnant Maid, the Poisoner, Duster Mad, Priestess, Her Handmaidens, the Apothic, Her Majesty's Gown, the Bleeding Throne, Map of All, the Bitten Fruit, the Reverie Key, Tower Lost, I think it's Fantasy Orchid, the Mandrake, the Immortal Library, Castle Midnight, the Imaginasium, the Vanishing Market, and Fire Undying. It's a lot, 32. And throughout the book, we get to see, we only got to meet a few of them, such as Prince of Hearts, the Undead Queen, and her handmaidens. The Vanishing Market. We got to go to the Vanishing Market, and I think that was it actually. Yes. Oh, and the Oracle, because it's in the Deck of Destiny. So, say 5 maybe out of 32. Just felt that there was a lot being thrown at us, a bit too much. So it made the book feel a bit confusing at times, because you're trying to focus on the actual main plots that's actually happening in the book, but then you're getting thrown a lot of information about all these fates, and it got a bit much, I think. So because of that, I give the world development a 4 out of 5, because the world itself was really nicely done. It was just that there was just too many fates being thrown at us, that it just made it very hard to sort of keep up with it all, to be honest with you. So yeah, number 3, pacing. Overall, the pacing of the second book was a massive big improvement from the first. Like, with a lot of the main plot points being spaced out throughout the book, which gave the reader more time to adjust and appreciate each moment. There were still parts where I felt like there was times where I was waiting for things to happen. That was much more earlier in the book, but it kind of grew into a nice pace that I really liked. And for that, I give it 4 out of 5. It was really good. The pacing in this book is far better than the first one, or at least for me. So 4 out of 5. Overall, the book had a good plot at the heart of it. I just felt like there were times where it's really hard to follow because there was just too much going on in the book. I think this was largely due to the vast quantity of fates, which I've already mentioned, so I'm not going to go into that as much as what I've already done. But I think I will say a lot of the fates at that point just didn't really have a lot of importance to the overall plot of this particular book, Legendary, and I think it sort of took away time away from the actual main plot, which was Teller winning the Caraval. Teller winning the Caraval game, so then she could either give Legend up to Jax, so she could get her mom, or side with Legend to try and stop the Fates from coming out of the Deck of Destiny. That was the main plot of the story, and a lot of it, when it was focused on this plot, it was done really nicely. When it wasn't focusing on this plot, it just took away a lot from that, which kind of sucks. Like, there was two side plots that was happening that I can recall from the top of my head, which either one just didn't go anywhere or was just kind of used as a distraction. One was with Scarlet, and I think it just wasn't really needed. Nothing on her character development, because her character development at the end actually shows that she's became even more courageous and wants to think more for herself, and she decided of her own choice to contact her ex-fiance, which shows just how far she came from the first book. However, the side plot of what is Scarlet up to, is she going against Teller, just wasn't needed. It didn't need to be in there. It actually would have been nice to see these girls communicate to each other what was going on, and Teller actually saying, the stuff with their mom, which actually is really important for Scarlet to know about, and I don't know why Stephanie didn't choose to have these girls communicate, especially because the whole point is showing that family is important. I understand where Teller was coming from in terms of protecting Scarlet, but at the same time, from the first book, we see that Scarlet actually doesn't need protecting. She's quite a strong-willed character, and it would have just been nice to, instead of having this whole mystery of is Scarlet going to betray Teller, would have been nice just to actually see them communicating and Scarlet helping Teller save their mom. So yeah, and the second side plot that was happening was about the Empress and her hidden heir. We don't know where her child is. That's never resolved. We know that her hair is missing, and both Jax and Legend take advantage of that fact by coming out that they are the missing heir. But we still don't know who the heir is. Now, I don't know if this character will be seen in the third book. Otherwise, this plot has just been dangled and left and forgotten about, which isn't great. And I really hope that that's not the case. I mean, I'm sure we'll see it in the third book. You will see if we do in my third review, which should be out sometime this week, which would be good because I haven't finished the book just yet, but I've almost finished the third one. And I suppose I can say that we haven't still seen this heir, so I don't know who this missing heir is. So yeah, I hope we get to see the missing heir at least towards the end of the third book. Anyways, there was another part as well which also really confused me, and that was the kiss of death by Jack to Teller. So he gives her this kiss of death, which means she has a certain amount of time to live before she dies. We see the symptoms of the kiss of death through the fact that her heartbeats are slowed. Her heartbeat goes from like 3 beats to 2 times it was one, and then Legend and Julian gave her a bit of, I think, their blood or Legend's blood, which helped to boost it back to 2. And it was this whole thing about whether or not she was going to die in the book. And then the next thing you know, she finds out that she is his true love, and therefore she cannot die, and the symptoms just kind of fade away. Now, I don't know if it's because Jack controls the symptoms, or I don't know, I'm just really confused. I got really confused. I was like, if it wasn't going to lead anywhere, was it really needed, or was it just in here to show that Taylor was his true love? But then I feel like there's better ways that could have been written. I don't know. It hindered the plot a bit, and yeah, I didn't quite make sense of it. And the fact that the characters just weren't talking to each other also frustrated me, and I was like, But I do like the way that their mom was set up to play a big role in the world, and I'm looking forward to seeing how she's handled in the 3rd book. Although, as you know now, I have already read it. Not happy, but we'll get to that in the 3rd review. But for right now, in Legend, she's set up as someone who has a lot of information about the Fates, and I'm hoping to learn more. And also to see the relationship between her and her daughters, and how they would evolve, how it would evolve, like, yeah, well, I also really like the relationship between Legend, the Witch, and the Fates, and I think that's really interesting. And I think it was written quite well. So, but there is a lot of issues with the plot, and that's why I have to give it 3 out of 5. And last but not least, the 5th part of my review, language. Just like the 1st book, the language in this book is excellent, and helps to portray the story beautifully throughout the book. I really love how she uses quite whimsical language in it, and I just love the way she writes. It's so pretty. It's so nice. There's so many quotes in this book that I just really love. And really funny that, like, this book was actually had a really nice kind of dry sense of humor to it. The first one does too, but it's much more like snarky because it's Julian, while in this book it's definitely more the more passionate relationship between Taylor and Dante, who are very fiery characters, while Julian and Scarlett are more like, if I was to give these characters elements, it would be Taylor and Dante are like fire. They're like very passionate. They give everything their all. Scarlett's kind of like the element air, and Julian's is a very grounded character, so he's like earth. So I feel like Scarlett and Julian as a relationship is quite balanced. So this type of humor is quite sweet and snarky when they banter against each other. Well, Dante and Taylor are very fiery, clashy characters that their sense of humor is very funny. And there were moments in this book which I really enjoyed because of that. So I would give this part, language, a 5 out of 5. So in conclusion, I really, really loved this book. It was a lovely sequel to the first one, and it was really fascinating seeing Taylor's perspective. You can see how many sticky tabs I got through. Helped me to understand her a lot more as a character, and also helped me to understand her actions in the first book as well a lot more, which is nice. It was a bit more heavy on the romance. However, I liked the way that the romance was handled, and I think it was really good. I actually really enjoyed the romance in this story. So yeah, and I still like how the focus was still on family and trying to save their mom, and I think that was really nice. One thing I am worried about is how the third, well, I was worried about until I've now read the third book. I was worried about how it was going to handle the perspective change in the third book. I was hoping that the third book was going to be in the point of view of the mom, because I would have thought that would have been really good, a brilliant way to do it. We get to see, why the mom has chose some of the actions the way that way she has, and I think it would have helped the series come a really nice full circle. However, that didn't happen, and instead we got split perspectives. However, I'm not a big fan of how Stephanie Garber did that in the third book, which sort of sucks, but we will get on to that in the third review. But for this book in particular, for Legendary, I give it it scored 21 out of 25, which gives it a score of 84%, and that is 5 stars. It's on the lower end of the 5-star range, but it is still 5 stars, and it's still a brilliant book. So definitely recommend this series. Pick it up if you want to. If you want something magical, something nice, definitely recommend. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.